I babysat a 5-year-old girl named Sophie who wore pink dresses and painted nails. On my first day, she whispered, "I'm not really Sophie," and begged me not to tell mommy. I found out the real Sophie died as a baby 7 years ago, and the parents were forcing their son, Samuel, to be their dead daughter, making him sit to pee, banning boy toys, and installing cameras when I trimmed an inch of his hair. The first day I arrived at the Dickens household, they introduced me to Sophie. Sophie was a 5-year-old boy. He stood there in a pink dress and a long wig, accompanied by little dress shoes and painted nails that didn't suit him. At first, I assumed the family had just finished playing dress up or something, especially since the boy looked so uncomfortable. But then the parents started giving me detailed instructions on how to interact with Sophie. They told me to refer to her as Princess. If she wants to watch cartoons, show her Powerpuff Girls. Even told me to only give her feminine foods, whatever that means. I remember making this very confused but understanding face, one the Dickens evidently picked up on. They immediately started explaining Sophie was exploring her identity, and they were modern thinking, so they were allowing it. But when I looked at Sophie, this didn't seem to be the case at all. The moment the parents left that first day, something weird happened. Sophie looked right at me and whispered, "I'm not really Sophie." I asked him gently who he really was, but his eyes went wide and he slapped his hand over his mouth. "Please don't tell mommy I said that," he begged, and ran up to his room. His voice had this fear I'd only heard in children who were hit. A few minutes later, I went up to his room just to check on how he was doing, and saw him quietly brushing the hair of his dolls in this mechanical way. He had tears streaming down his cheeks, and kept quietly humming something about being Sophie. Over the next few weeks, things got progressively stranger and more heartbreaking. I remember helping organize some paperwork one day when I found his birth certificate. Shocker, he wasn't Sophie, he was Samuel. I asked him what he wanted me to call him the moment I found out, but he just shook his head really hard and said, "Sophie doesn't like other names." The way he talked about himself in third person creeped me out. I also found out about all these crazy rules he had to follow. He wasn't allowed to wear pants, even when stepping outside in the freezing cold January. He was forced to sit down to pee. He was also banned from playing with boy toys like building blocks and toy cars. The worst was when I asked him if he wanted me to cut his hair because it clearly kept annoying him. I do, but mommy cries when I ask that, so I never cut it. I proceeded to trim in by an inch and told him it would be our little secret. I think he liked that. The thing was, the more I watched him, the more intense Mrs. Dickens got about everything. The day after I cut his hair by an inch, she installed cameras in the playroom. She never said anything to me, but it's like she knew. She also started texting me constantly throughout the day. "Is Sophie playing correctly? Send photos." 2 months into babysitting, the kid started referring to himself only in third person all the time, something he never did before. "Sophie doesn't like trucks, Sophie likes dolls," he'd say, even when playing alone. That's when 9 weeks in, I found it. I was getting supplies from the Dickens hall closet and accidentally knocked over some picture frames. Turns out that was the best possible thing that could have happened. You see, behind the others was this photo that made the gears in my head turn. The photo was of a newborn baby, surrounded by tubes and wires in what was clearly a NICU. On the back in Mrs. Dickens' handwriting, it said Sophie's first day, with a date from 7 years ago, 2 before Samuel was even born. And then, literally that same day while coming back from a walk with Sophie, this elderly woman next door stopped us. She knelt down and looked at Sophie with such concern. "Is Sophie all right?" she asked me quietly. She always looks so rigid, like she's performing. Then she touched his shoulder really gently and said, "Children should play, not perform. Remember that," before heading inside. Something changed in Sophie after that. The next day during art time, I was coming back from the bathroom when I heard this determined snipping sound. I rushed back in, and there was Sophie with craft scissors in hand, deliberately cutting chunks of his long hair off. He was whispering something over and over, and when I got closer, I heard it. "Children should play. Children should play." When Mrs. Dickens arrived early to pick him up and saw what happened, she completely lost it. Absolutely lost it. She started screaming, "Why does this keep happening? And you're ruining everything again." She was sobbing and trying to forcibly attach